Google and Facebook are now on the defensive over the role their platforms played in the events at the Capitol. An insider video shows Twitter CEO warning the crackdown is much bigger than just banning President Trump. That's in contrast to his public statements. And there are now more National Guards serving as security ahead of the inauguration in D.C. than are deployed overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. Tune in to Deep Dive as we explore those topics and more. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. Officials are ramping up security in D.C. ahead of inauguration after the past events at the Capitol. A top Homeland Security official said Friday they have not identified specific credible threats ahead of Inauguration Day. Acting Deputy Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security said on CNN's New Day, there's no specific credible threats at this point in time. There's just this raised level of tension. And so we're raising our security level, and we're doing it across the country. This comes after FBI Director Christopher Wray told Vice President Mike Pence yesterday the Bureau was seeing an extensive amount of concerning online chatter of potential threats before and during the inauguration. Wray said, "We are concerned about the potential for violence at multiple protests and rallies planned here in D.C. and in state capitals around the country in the days that come that could bring armed individuals within close proximity to government facilities and officials." At this point in time, officials are not raising the terrorism threat level, but are taking a number of actions to try to be ready if a threat does manifest. And Acting Homeland Security Director said he agreed there is a good deal of online chatter regarding both Washington and state capitals, though no specific state capitals have been mentioned or identified. He added, "We've prepared our own civilian law enforcement around the country to be ready to assist state and local allies to the extent that they call on us to do so. We are pre-positioning people on alert statuses around the country so that we can respond more quickly." And on the note of security, the number of National Guard members to be present during inauguration is more than the ones deployed overseas in Afghanistan and Iraq combined. There will be around 21,000 National Guards in D.C. next week. This comes as the U.S. reached the Trump administration's goal to reduce American troops in Iraq and Afghanistan to 2,500 each. That's according to Pentagon Chief Chris Meier on Friday. He said in a statement the drawdown of U.S. force levels in Iraq is reflective of the increased capabilities of the Iraqi security forces, noting, "We have long anticipated that the force level required to support Iraq's fight against ISIS would decrease as Iraq's capability to manage the threat from ISIS improves. Our ability to reduce force levels is evidence of real progress." Meier also announced a 2,500 troop level reduction in Afghanistan, saying it brings the United States, quote, "closer than ever to ending nearly 2 decades of war." He said the U.S. remains in position to ensure that Afghanistan is never again used to harbor those who seek to bring harm to the United States of America. Now let's talk big tech. The nonprofit Project Veritas has released a video from a Twitter whistleblower. It shows CEO Jack Dorsey discussing censorship. Project Veritas' new leaked video appears to show Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey's internal discussions before banning President Trump.
We are focused on one account right now, but this is going to be much bigger than just one account, and it's going to go on for much longer than just this day, this week, the next few weeks. It's going to go on beyond the inauguration.
It was purportedly filmed secretly by an inside whistleblower at Twitter. Dorsey suggests they have to be ready to censor more accounts.
So the focus is certainly on this account and how it ties to real-world violence, but also we need to think much longer term around how these dynamics play out over time. I don't believe this is going away anytime soon.
Project Veritas tweeted that the video is evidence of censorship gone wild. Twitter permanently banned the president 2 days after the Capitol breach, accusing him of inciting violence. Twitter has also already deleted a large number of pro-Trump accounts. Earlier this week, Dorsey said the company's decision to remove Trump was divisive and set a dangerous precedent, but he said he believes it was the right decision. Project Veritas' founder, James O'Keefe, replied that Project Veritas has insiders within Twitter coming to them to blow the whistle on Dorsey. O'Keefe went on to say that he's never seen such an influx of tech whistleblowers reach out to Project Veritas in his life. He adds that although social media platforms are private companies, they have more power than all three branches of government. He indicated there was further information regarding Twitter that would be released in the future. While the Project Veritas video shows what happens in private, on the public sphere, Dorsey posted a thread on Twitter explaining the rationale behind banning Trump, defending his decision, but at the same time saying big tech has too much power. He suggested an open, decentralized standard for social media, citing an announcement from 2019 when the company announced it was funding a small team, Blue Sky, to create such a standard. What's interesting is that Dorsey would push for an alternative platform to his own company. And this comes as many have been pointing to Twitter's hypocrisy, noting the platform allows world leaders from China and Iran to remain active on Twitter despite many of their statements being violent or controversial. A Florida representative, Randy Fine, called out big tech's one-sided censorship. Fine said it is clear that Twitter and Facebook are engaged in one-sided viewpoint discrimination targeting conservatives. He added that these companies allow actual terrorists around the world to use their platforms to target America, Americans, and our allies without as much as a peep. And it is not disputed that Amazon, Apple, and Google are actively working to eliminate any alternative outlets where conservatives can speak freely. Fine is calling on the state of Florida to divest from such platforms as Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, and Google. And he's encouraging other lawmakers to follow suit. He says these platforms are unfairly targeting President Trump and his supporters. In his letter, Fine warned if the President of the United States can be silenced by these companies, then so can anyone. He went on to say, I am deeply disturbed to see the country's major technology companies use the actions of these few as a pretext to silence tens of millions of good patriotic Americans, millions of whom live here in Florida. He added, Florida taxpayers should not be forced to do business with entities that censor them. A Twitter spokesperson, meanwhile, told Fox News Thursday that recent tweets by China's communist regime do not break the social media platform's rules. In the tweet, the Chinese regime denied the existence of forced labor in Xinjiang province and accused the United States of making up lies about the documented human rights violations there. In a series of tweets, China's foreign ministry spokesperson claimed that forced labor is the biggest lie of the century, aimed to restrict and suppress the relevant Chinese authorities and companies and contain China's development. According to widespread investigative reporting, the Chinese regime has ramped up the crackdown on Xinjiang's ethnic Uyghur minorities in the region. This includes mass internment of around 1 million people, compulsory re-education programs, highly intrusive human and digital surveillance, religious suppression, enforced sterilization of women, and forced labor. The Associated Press conducted an extensive investigation, which included interviews with some 30 former detainees. It found that China's communist authorities subjected hundreds of thousands of Uyghur women to pregnancy checks and forced them to undergo sterilization procedures and abortions. And last October, U.S. senators introduced a bipartisan bill declaring that China is committing genocide against Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities. The resolution declares China's atrocities against Uyghurs, ethnic Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, and members of other Muslim minority groups in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region constitutes genocide. China denies claims of concentration camps, calling them vocational centers instead. Leaked documents seen by the BBC confirm that 1 million Uyghurs were locked up and forced to undergo ideological re-education. And as users attempted to flee to Parler and other social media websites, Amazon Web Services suspended its service with Parler on January 11th, triggering a lawsuit from the company hours later. Parler is urging a U.S. judge to rule in its favor. The social media site says Amazon should be made to restore the platform. Parler says Amazon had no evidence the social media platform was used to incite the U.S. Capitol breach. At a hearing in Seattle federal court, Parler's lawyers said the company would suffer irreparable harm if forced to close, adding, quote, millions of law-abiding Americans have had their voices silenced. Parler is favored by many Trump supporters and claimed more than 12 million users. Amazon's lawyer said Parler violated its contract by failing to effectively monitor content. Parler said Amazon had no contractual right to pull the plug and did so in a politically motivated bid to benefit Twitter, a larger Amazon client that Parler said did not censor violent content targeting conservatives. In a statement, Amazon said that suspending Parler had nothing to do with politics. Parler wants a temporary court order that it be restored to Amazon servers while it litigates. On top of Twitter and Facebook, most recently Google's YouTube removed new content from Trump's account and suspended his channel for at least a week, saying that the channel violated its policies for inciting violence. The president has argued that companies like Google, Twitter, and Facebook will fail due to censorship, saying they've made a catastrophic mistake. Trump said big tech is doing a horrible thing to our country, adding he believes it's going to be a catastrophic mistake for them. Twitter's move to ban Trump was met with criticism from world leaders, including the president of France and chancellor of Germany. And Twitter and Facebook lost a whopping combined $51.2 billion in market value after banning President Trump. Big tech cited President Trump and his supporters as inciting violence at the Capitol as the reason for banning the accounts. But now Google and Facebook are placed on the defensive this week. They're now facing questions as to the role their platforms played in the January 6th breach of the U.S. Capitol. This is because among the platforms protesters who stormed the Capitol used included Google-owned YouTube and Facebook. Alphabet and Google CEOs said this week that the company had been worried about the possibility of real-world harm and incitement of violence. His comments came during the Reuters Next conference. He said while he doesn't want to say they clearly anticipated what happened last week, he says the potential for violence was something concerning, adding there had been intelligence leading up to it. He also said just like with elections 4 years ago and the potential for foreign interference, we are constantly learning from these moments, and the internet, I think as a whole, needs to come to terms with what kind of information can spread, and it's definitely more to do from all our sides. A Facebook spokeswoman, meanwhile, told reporters on Twitter that the COO, Cheryl, began by noting these events were organized online, including on our platforms, with the clear suggestion we have a role. The spokeswoman added she was making the point, which has been made by many journalists and academics, that our crackdowns on QAnon, militia, and hate groups has meant large amounts of activity has migrated to other platforms with fewer rules and enforcement. But let me know what you think below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meier, and see you soon.